Hello. It's good to see you. Today I'm going to read a book to you, and there's a little moral to the story, and it tells us that every creature is useful and special in its own way. So we're going to read a little book about that. Now the title of this book is Pish Posh. Pish Posh. That is beautiful. Look at that. I wish I could write like that. That is so pretty. It's so decorative and swirly and swoopy. Pish Posh. I'm going to be using this little pointer. We're going to read this book together. And we have pretty pictures in here to look at too. I could see Bob Ross painting that. It'd be really nice. All right. Clouds flit and fly with the wind as it blows across the seas. The clouds drop a little rain here and a little snow there as they circle and dip around the world. But when they have loosed all of their thunder and need somewhere quiet to rest, the clouds roll slowly around and up the magical, majestic mountains of Machu Picchu. There, after resting, they gather together to go once more around the world, only to return again and again to Machu Picchu. That's literally what it says. If you correct my pronunciation, I will hit you with a llama. Machu Picchu was filled with a variety of gentle creatures who lived and loved its mountainous country. There were birds that, as they flew, captured billowing clouds under their enormous wings. There were fishes that swam in the mighty rivers that gurgled and giggled over waterfalls and rushing rapids. And there were furry, four-legged creatures of every kind that bounded and bounced about the rocks and meadows of these mighty mountains. And look up here, you can see some deer and this beautiful waterfall. We have all this lovely green, and then we have the snow-capped mountains back here. And what Bob Ross used to call little M birds, because they look like the letter M, kind of. And he would put little M birds in the sky. They kind of look like that. Beautiful scene. They are deer. I thought they might be something else, but I'm looking at the ears. I believe they're deer. Look at that. One of the many creatures who lived high upon these mountains was a llama named Posh. The wool that came from Posh's fur was the finest of the fine. It could even be said that his wool was better than the best. This, and the fact that he lived up in the mountains, high above the other creatures, led Posh to believe that he was better than anyone else in Machu Picchu. Look at his little face. He's so pretty. You know, this is totally off topic, but my dad and I pulled an abandoned Volkswagen bus out of a field that had sheep in it. And living with the sheep was a llama. Looked a lot like that. The llama did not take too kindly to us being in his field, messing with the bus. My dad hooked a chain to it and we pulled it out of the field, but in the process of trying to hook it up, the llama came and spit on me. I have been spat upon by one of these creatures. It was actually pretty funny. One of Posh's favorite things to do was to wander the hills and valleys looking for a creature who was his equal or better. A creature better than me? An impossible feat indeed. he said to himself as he walked beside the winding river. He stopped to gaze down at his own reflection in the water, but it was broken by a fish leaping for a bug. Posh looked at the fish with great disdain and said, "Fish are such ugly, ugly little creatures. Ugly little eyes, ugly little scales, ugly little fins, and such ugly, ugly little tails. Creatures with no purpose at all." Satisfied that fish could never be his equal, let alone his better, he stuck his nose in the air and walked away with tiny little steps to continue his search. Look at that fish. Now, I wouldn't say that was ugly. Such a beautiful scene. Look at all the greenery and the little rocks. And we still have the mountains back there and all the pretty trees. Later that day, he climbed one of the many high, jagged peaks of Machu Picchu. Following his nose, which was high in the air already, he climbed and climbed until he came up to the place where he had to go down. It was from this vantage that Posh watched the birds as they flew, dipping and soaring over the mountains high. Posh watched in horror as one bird flew so close that it actually mussed his precious wool coat. Posh threw his nose into the air and said, "Birds are such rude, clumsy creatures. Rude and clumsy, rude and clumsy. Fat, feathered birds are simply rude and clumsy, and they serve no purpose at all." And with that, the snooty llama lifted his nose even higher into the air and minced along his way. Look at those pretty birds. Look at that. They look like doves or something. And he is really put out by this proximity here. Why are you so close to me? And we still have the beautiful sky and the trees and these fluffy clouds. It looks like a beautiful day. When the sun was at its hottest, usually between early bright light and dark, all the way down, Posh stopped his search to rest in the cool shade at the edge of a shadowy glade. As he lay there looking about, occasionally munching a bit of grass or lilac or lily, he watched the bunnies as they played about the meadow. Now, bunnies play silly, raucous games, and they always get out of hand. And so as Posh was munching his lunch a bit and a bunch, one of the bunnies hopped over his back as it played. With all the disdain he could muster, Posh mumbled and muttered, "Horrid little bunnies, ugly furry things, long ugly ears, floppy fuzzy feet. Horrid little bunnies are such ugly, ugly things. Oh, they serve no purpose at all." And up into the air he lofted his nose once again as he went looking for his equal or better. Now look at these little, oh, I didn't see this one. We have a little bunny here with some gray on him. And this one is looking up at Posh, and Posh is just not interested at all. Almost looks like wisteria there. And we have our two little bunnies, and they're just playing. They're just enjoying a beautiful day. And he is just not interested. The very next day, as fate would have it, Posh met his equal in the likes of another llama named Pish. At first, Posh thought he was looking at his own reflection. The coat was of the finest wool, the legs straight and graceful. Posh looked once, Posh looked twice, and noticed quite truly that Pish looked very, very nice. A perfect creature that was his equal. "You wouldn't believe," said Posh to Pish as he chuckled, "all the trouble I have had finding a creature in Mashu Pishu that was my equal or better. I saw the horrid bunnies and the rude, clumsy birds. Why, Pish, I even gazed upon the ugly little fish, hideous creatures that serve no purpose at all." I love their fabulous eyelashes. Look how long they are. And they really are that long in real life. They really do look like a mirror image of each other. Of course, we're seeing the back here and the front here. And this one's a little shorter, but they do look a lot alike. Posh laughed and laughed, and as his vicious laughter rang throughout the mountains of Mashu Pishu, Pish watched him in astonishment. "You know," said Pish, "all the creatures may be ugly to you, but in fact they are beautiful and important in their own special way." Posh stopped his laughing with a giggle and gulp, and thought for a moment. "Well, that may very well be, but, ugly or not, surely they serve no purpose at all. Come, let me show you," Posh said as he led Pish back to the river and the fish. I think this is Posh and this is Pish. I could be wrong. But you can see them here. It looks like they're heading that way. And they're on some rocky terrain. You see their long legs here. This one's a little more gray and this one's a little more brown. And we have these pretty trees back here. These look like evergreen trees in the background. We still have our beautiful blue sky and the white fluffy clouds. It's still a really nice day. They waited at the edge of the stream for a moment, maybe two, and then one of the fish splashed and splished right in front of Pish. Pish swished her head and gently said, "Why, look at how delightful the fish are, Posh. Their scales protect them from the rocks in the fast-running water. Their fins move them against the current, and their tails guide them wherever they wish to go. They eat and are eaten as a very important link in the food chain." Posh was very annoyed, for Pish was right beyond all doubt. "Well," Posh snorted snobbily, "the fish may serve some purpose, but just wait until I show you the rude, clumsy birds that fly about." They're both seeing this fish here. They both are gazing upon the little fish that jumped up out of the water. But in a way, they both see this fish very differently, although I think Posh has come around a little bit and is willing to admit that they may serve some purpose. But he's eager to move on to something else to show that it does not have a purpose. We're going to go to the birds that fly about, rude and clumsy. I've never heard a bird described as clumsy before, except maybe a penguin. Sometimes they can be, when they're not in the water, they can be a little clumsy, but that's okay. Pish and Posh climbed the jagged peaks of Mashu Pishu. Up and up they climbed until they came to the place where there was no more up, only down. As they watched, a flock of birds swirled and dipped in the sky above them. Pish watched in awe and then patiently said, "The birds' wings give them lift against the wind so they can swoop and glide. As they glide and fly, They eat hundreds of tiny little bugs that otherwise would be trying to bite you or me. So you see, Posh, the birds serve a wonderful purpose, and they fill the sky with music. Oh, so pretty. So we have 3 of our little birds up here again, and we're at the very top up here. And again, we have Pish and Posh, and they are both regarding the birds, but they are kind of seeing them differently. It's a good example of how 2 individuals can see the same thing but take away something very different from that experience. That's why it's good to listen to other people. Even if you don't agree with them, you might learn something. At the very least, you might be able to better understand why they feel the way they do. Well, said Posh with much disdain, the fish may serve a purpose, and the birds serve a purpose. But just wait until I show you those horrid little bunnies. With a snap of his head, Posh led a chuckling Pish down the mountain to the rabbits below. He's coming around a little bit, I think. Oh, here they are. Look, they're laughing there. Look at them. They're having a wonderful afternoon. Look, they don't care. They're just having a good time. Together, they waited, munching a bit of lunch in the cool shade. Sure enough, it wasn't very long before the bunnies came out into the meadow to play. Pish watched and laughed as the bunnies cavorted, playing some silly rabbit game. Look, said Pish, the bunnies have long ears so that they might hear the tiniest sounds there are to hear. Their feet are large so they can bound high and run fast. And besides being food for other animals, they make me laugh. I try not to think about them being food for other animals, but they are. They are. So they're fun, and they can hear things, they can jump high and run fast, and they're very entertaining to watch. Posh stood there and thought of all his new-found friend had said. Then he squinted his eyes and spoke in a tinny, lofty voice. I have shown you the fish, Pish. I have shown you the rude and clumsy birds and the horrid little bunnies. Before listening to all, you said I thought you were my equal. But now I don't think you have a purpose either. Ooh, plot twist. Pish looked at Posh and bitterly said, Yes, Posh, I guess to you I really serve no purpose. To be your equal, I would have to believe that I was better than everyone else, but I am not. My neck is long and ugly, my ears are too small, and my legs seem to be too long. Yet my fur makes marvelous wool. My purpose is no greater or less than any other creature's. With that, Pish walked away, her tail swishing behind her. I think this is Pish. And I think Pish has had enough of Posh's ridiculousness. But do you agree what she said? Do you agree with what she had to say? That her neck is long and ugly, her ears are too small, and her legs seem to be too long? I don't agree, but I think she's just trying to make a point. I don't think she really feels that way. Their fur makes marvelous wool. It really does. I have an alpaca wool sweater. It's very warm. Well, I guess no. Oh, we're talking about llamas, but anyway. So, Posh continued to search for his equal or better throughout the majestic mountains of Machu Picchu. With his nose held high, so that his eyes could not truly see, he walked from valley to valley on narrow, twisted paths, searching for something that he would never find. For you see, when your nose and head are held too high, you, like Posh, can't truly see what is around you. And when that happens, you serve no purpose at all. The end. So he didn't really learn anything from that. I was kind of hoping he would, but look at all the things she showed him, and it didn't help. So here's how he was, like that. And he encountered these animals, the fish, the birds, the bunny rabbits. And then he met Pish. This, I think, was his opportunity to really see things differently. And I think Pish really tried to help. Unfortunately, showing how the fish is so suited to its environment, and the birds and how wonderful they are, showing him that. You know, they eat the little bugs that would be bothering them otherwise. And the rabbits that have the big ears so they can hear, the big feet so they can jump high and run fast. And also being food for other animals and being entertaining to watch. Showing him all of that still was not enough to help him understand that everything serves a purpose. So Pish and Posh parted ways. And I think overall, I believe Pish has a happier life. I think Pish enjoys life more than traveling alone for the rest of his days, trying to find someone better or superior, but he can't because he holds his nose so high that his eyes cannot truly see. And that is why he walked from valley to valley on narrow, twisted paths, searching for something that he would never find. When that happens, you serve no purpose at all. So really, Posh, in the end, is no better than the animals he looks down upon. And that is the end of that story. Pish Posh. Thank you so much for watching. I really hope you enjoyed getting to hear this little story today. Certainly gives you something to think about. Just because you can't see the purpose in something or the value doesn't mean it isn't there. Thank you so much for being here. I really hope that you have a wonderful day, and I will see you again really soon.